Hey guys, welcome to another video of eCommerce Street Shorts. In this video, I chat away with someone who currently runs a Facebook ad agency. This person has also worked at Facebook before he started an agency, so he has some inside information that I think is truly gold nugget type information. So without further ado, sit back, get comfortable, enjoy this video, maybe have it on in the background while you're working, or just sit back and watch it, listen to us go back and forth with a bunch of ideas about Facebook ads, iOS 14, etc. And I'll see you guys later. Today I'm here with Archit, who is owner of a Facebook ad agency, and we're just going to cover all kinds of stuff regarding Facebook ads today. How you doing, man?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Big fan of
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the main talk of the town right now are a few things that we're going to cover, like iOS 14 and just the general misconceptions people have. I think we'll start with like misconceptions that people have about Facebook and like your take on what you see commonalities, like problems that people have with Facebook ads, and then maybe we'll talk about iOS 14 afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. So I think some of the biggest misconceptions people have about Facebook is one, that it should be the main traffic driver for your website or for your brand. I think where Facebook is really good is an accelerant in the top of the funnel. So driving net new people to your site, ideally folks who are interested in the category or have expressed some kind of interest. And that's why they're clicking on the ad. But what it's not is like a successful single channel to grow your brand. There's got to be like, and you know this, there's got to be like organic in the mix. There's got to be some other kind of paid media going on, just something so that if the platform gets a little funky or if a day drops off, your brand isn't totally screwed and you have other places that can pick up the slack. This also helps Facebook get more of like data on the pixel and just get a better, fuller understanding of who actually is going to buy your product.
Right. Yeah, right. I totally agree too. Like in 2021, like having that whole omni-channel presence for your marketing is huge, let alone like where you're actually selling, like getting your brand on like not just the Shopify, but like, Amazon, all that good stuff, Etsy.
Yeah.
But to loop back to what you said, yeah, I totally agree. Omni-channel is important. A lot of people have misconceptions regarding their testing strategy. So if we're talking top of funnel, like a lot of people are stuck between like CBO versus ABO versus if they should always optimize for a certain event. Would love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, totally. I think testing is interesting. So I worked at Facebook for a couple of years. So we did a lot of, I ran like maybe 60 or 70 measurement tests. And that's not just like A/B tests, but like brand lift studies, conversion lift studies, all this stuff. And one thing I found is there's kind of a hierarchy of what is effective testing. So like the most accurate test is usually like a split, like A/B test. But the trade-off is that you need to have a high enough budget for that to be accurate. So if you do an A/B test with, let's make a random number up, $20, that's probably not going to be effective because there's just not enough data to really get out of the learning phase and for Facebook to have a full understanding of how people respond to the two, A version and B version. So it's like maybe you see in the first day, the A version totally takes off and you're like, oh man, like this ad is way better than this other messaging strategy that we're trying. What might actually happen like 5 days down is that the B version starts to pick back up and ends up cumulatively being way more impactful. So if you're not running your A/B test for 14 days at a high enough budget, which is going to depend on like your order value and how many purchases you get, all that stuff, then probably not worth it to do that. What's second most effective in terms of accuracy is just DCO. So using dynamic creative, dropping a bunch of different versions of your ad in there and letting it automatically kind of decide which one to spit out. I guess the main value here is like it's faster, it's almost as accurate, and you just get learnings, really quickly that you can relatively rely on. And then third is like dropping everything into the same ad set. This works really well if you're only dropping new creative into the ad set, but if you have existing creative, even somewhere else in the account, Facebook actually tracks the ad ID, like of the creative itself, and is going to prioritize that creative over everything else. So if you ever drop new creative in an ad set and you're like, oh, it's still just delivering to the same ad I've been running for 12 months, it's like, yeah, but that has 12 months of learnings on it. So Facebook's very hesitant to let that learning go and try something new.
Right.
So that's really accurate if you just have only new creative in the ad set, but otherwise probably better to go one of the other two routes.
Mm-hmm. There's also that huge talk I hear. A lot of I guess, newer marketers have about the learning phase, and if it's as important as people think it is, if it's alarming to see it when it says learning limited? What would you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's the most impactful piece of the puzzle. So I don't usually obsess over what percent of my ads are in learning limited, especially if you're at a lower budget. It's kind of inevitable that some things will be learning limited. And even working with big advertisers, like sometimes I see that the most successful ad sets are in learning limited. So I wouldn't take that as like the end all be all, but it's a good gauge. If you see that you have like 40 ad sets running, each has like $2 and they're all learning limited, well, you probably need to consolidate some of them to get more accurate results and to help it just kind of learn your audience better. So I use it as like a secondary metric, but not as like the first thing I'm looking at.
Right. So I guess if we're talking metrics, then if the second one, the third one you look at as like the learning limited, what are like the primary ones that you think most e-commerce people should be focused on regarding
Totally.
top of funnel?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like probably the main metrics I'm looking at on a day-to-day basis are obviously like return on ad spend, cost per purchase. Those are the two. And then order value, conversion rate, which order value you can make through the custom metrics
Mm-hmm.
column, conversion rate, unique outbound click-through rate, and unique cost per click. Those are probably the 4 or 5 or whatever that I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
They just give you a good sense of like how many people are getting from Facebook to your website, what's the cost of that, how many people are converting on the website, and what's the value they're converting at.
Right. Wait, did you mention unique outbound click, you said?
Yeah, unique outbound click-through rate.
Right. That's something that I haven't looked at too much, to be honest. So that's something I have to look into. I'm always looking at cost per purchase, order value, and conversion rate. I was also not even aware that you can do those custom formulas, like to make your own kind of columns, I guess,
Yeah.
for like until like a few months ago. But it's actually very insightful.
Yeah, it's super helpful. Yeah, I think the click-through rate is helpful because, it gives you like a pretty good gauge of like how effective your ads are. If you have like, I'm taking an average product, this is different per industry, obviously, but like, let's say you have like a click-through rate that's like 2.8%. It's like, okay, if nothing else, you know that your ads are resonating with your audience. People like them enough that they're clicking to learn more. Whether or not your website is converting them is like a separate issue. But let's say your click-through rate is like 0.4, 0.04, something crazy like that, and your cost per click is like $7. It's not even worth figuring out what's going on the website because you're just not even getting people there. So you really got to double down on your messaging, the way you're positioning your product, the kind of visual elements you have in the ad, all that stuff.
Right. What would you say then? So we're not going to say like our click-through rate is 0.04, but say our click-through rate is hovering around 1%, and the cost per clicks, let's just say on $1, maybe $1.50, which obviously isn't the best, but the ROAS is extremely high.
Yeah.
Do you care then? Like, is it like,
Yeah.
should you
I mean,
like,
totally. That's a good question. So I think definitely like ROAS is the first thing you look at. If you're ROAS focused, there's some brands I work with where they're actually cost CAC kind of focused because their subscription model or they have really good retention or whatever, cash flow is not an issue or whatever. But yeah, if ROAS is your like kind of key metric, that's the first thing you look at. And if that's good, then you're fine. The other things I would look at more to indicate like what is future progress going to look like. So if ROAS is good and like you're talking, cost per click is like $1.50, it's like, okay, well, maybe that's fine because my order value is like $200. So even if I have $1.50 cost per click and I have a 3% conversion rate, there's plenty of room for me to make money on the $200 order value. So I kind of use those other ones as like barometers of like how healthy is the business. Like maybe ROAS is great, but the cost per click is high and the order value is dropping week over week. You might look at that and go, okay, thinking forward to the next few weeks, I'm kind of concerned that if order value keeps dropping and the click-through rate keeps dropping, the cost per click keeps going up, this might not look so healthy 2 weeks from now. So maybe the creative is starting to get saturated or something else is happening here that I need to start thinking about. So I would use it forward facing, but I wouldn't freak out if ROAS is good. Like I'm chilling, everything is fine.
right,
Like the main one.
right. And that's kind of how I am. So we've covered kind of top of funnel, but moving towards like bottom of funnel and retargeting for e-commerce, there's that standard, I guess, people have where they're retargeting like website visitors that didn't purchase, or add to cart people that didn't purchase. Is there like certain time periods that you refer to, for example, like 7-day page viewers or 14 or whatever?
Yeah, and you mean in terms of like retargeting
Hmm.
folks? Yeah, I usually try to keep it broad, at least with it depends on the brand. If you have a limited budget, I would just go 30-day, because you don't want to constrain the audience too much. And the good thing about these like cost per click metrics and stuff like that is you'll see if you do a 7-day audience and it's too small, your cost per click will be like $10.
Hmm.
And it's just like, even with a high intent, there's no way we're going to be making money off this. So we have to expand the audience. So it'll kind of get obvious. But if you have plenty of budget, you're running 100K per month ad account and spend or something like that. I would split it out to probably like a 7-day, 7 to 30-day, or 7 to 15-day, 15 to 30, especially if you have different messaging for those folks, like tiered discounts or something like that.
Hmm.
And then I'd also do like engagement separately, or, people who engage with the ad or viewed videos or whatever. Sometimes even like some email marketing kind of lists could go in there. So just, the more money you have to play with, the more you can kind of flesh out the segmentation and the whole strategy. Otherwise it's like, just let Facebook do its thing and don't overcomplicate it.
Right. One of my main theories, like if I'm assuming that most people watching this have a lower budget, I think one of the cheapest ways to retarget effectively is through that engagement, like you said, with video view. So
Yeah.
sometimes we'll take people that just watch maybe half of our video of a video view audience and just retarget that with a discount code. And that will always convert. So I love what you said about messaging, because a lot of people, and I've seen agencies talk about this, and I've seen people's ad accounts myself, they use the same creative or copy in their top of funnel with the bottom of funnel. It's the exact same. And that's something I'd almost never recommend doing. I'm not sure if you see that happen a lot too, but if you have someone in your funnel at first and they don't convert, and then you show them the same thing again, it's like asking a girl out twice the same way. Like, it's usually not going to work.
Yeah, I agree. I think you definitely got to think about like where in the buying life cycle are they, and what kind of blockers are you trying to like unblock in that moment. So one thing I'll try to brainstorm with clients is, okay, let's say I've heard about your product and I'm on the fence. What are the reasons I'm on the fence? Is it because the price is too high, or because I'm thinking about a competitor, or because I don't trust the product quality, right? And then just having like really quick retargeting videos that hit each one of those. So it's like, price is too high, like here's why it's actually not as high as you think, or here's a little discount, or the value is so much more than the price. It's like, okay, you don't trust the product quality, here's a bunch of testimonials and review type ads showing how great the product quality is. So you just want to hit on each objection really simply, to kind of get over that hurdle.
Right. And that also makes complete sense. Like, of course, sometimes there's times where sometimes customers just will not convert for whatever reason, like especially if it's like an impulse purchase kind of product and they're just not buying it, like you're better off just moving on because it could get
Yeah.
expensive. So it's important to like segment in that sense.
Yeah, totally. There are some places where some ad accounts where I don't even really do a lot of retargeting, because it's like, if you didn't buy this after 2 or 3 exposures, it's probably not going to happen. So we'll do like, a 15-day look back, but it's just not really worth it beyond that point. Those are also places where I'm probably doing like 1-day click optimization, because it's like, you just got to see this and then get interested, or you're not interested. But it really depends on the product.
Right. Like that kind of reminded me of iOS 14. But when you're talking about conversion windows, like you said, usually the standard I think was 7-day click, 1-day view, I believe, or maybe the other way
Yeah.
around. But that's what we're on right now. And is there a humongous difference between that versus 1-day click? Like, will you see performance wise be a difference, or just like the attribution?
So this is I was talking about in the optimization, like in the ad set level. So I don't think it's like the biggest lever. Like I wouldn't do a lot of tests around it or anything unless you've exhausted other options. But I've found that like with some brands, it can be pretty incremental. If you're the kind of brand that it is really just like, a see it and then buy it type of purchase, then it's probably helpful to reduce the types of people that you're delivering to. And try to get less of like the view through people who see a product, think about it for 5 days, come back to it. That's like the 7-day click, 1-day view type of window.
Right. Right. So
That
that
makes
leads
sense?
me now. What's that?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me.
Cool.
We might split test a few that and we'll share results and see what happens. But that kind of leads me into like iOS 14, where a lot of people are freaking out. Facebook's putting all these big messages on people's ad accounts saying, things are changing, things are changing. I think it got rolled out a week or two ago, the update. What has your take been on that? Have you seen a decrease? Is there any solutions that you've found?
Yeah, so I haven't seen a huge decrease yet. I've definitely seen, there's like the bug in Ads Manager on some of the reporting, which is a little bit frustrating, but it's fine. We'll get over it. I think the biggest change is probably not going to happen in the short term, but more in like the next 6 months or something like that. My kind of assumption here is that Facebook has a bunch of data on how people behave and how they purchase and all that stuff. And so for the next like short term, they can just continue to use the first party data they've already collected from people and from advertisers and all that stuff. And where it's really going to become kind of an issue is like a few months down the road, as behaviors start to change, Facebook might not be able to keep up as well, because that first party data that they have will now be a little more like outdated, and they won't be able to collect as frequent and as accurate first party data at that point. So I'm kind of thinking about this more as like, okay, what's our game plan for the next year or couple of years, and not like, what do I need to be doing today? Like there are small things, you verify your domain and all that stuff that you should do today. But I think it's more about rethinking the way you do marketing holistically, like in the next year or like in the next couple of years or whatever.
Right. So I'm not sure if you were saying this exactly, but assuming that things continue the way you're theoretically thinking they would, does Facebook almost lose that monopolistic kind of image it has right now with advertising? Like things like TikTok and Snapchat are really, I think, becoming more popular, especially in the whole drop
Yeah.
shipping space. Could Facebook, they'll obviously still always be Facebook, but could they lose a bit of like that share they have?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of said it right there. Like Facebook will always be Facebook. It's just got so many users and such a head start on these other platforms in terms of how long they've been doing this. But yeah, you're also right that like TikTok is huge now, and I know you've seen tremendous success on TikTok. I know other brands I work with have seen that too. So there's always going to be a new platform that kind of comes and disrupts the way things are done, um, gives incentive for advertisers to shift their dollars over there. So yeah, Snapchat is a great contender. They've been working on their infrastructure. Even Pinterest has been working on their infrastructure really well. So yeah, I think less of a monopoly in the next couple of years, but Facebook's always going to have a position to play. Like it's just got billions of users across the world, really robust data set, great kind of engineers working on the ad side. So there's always going to be something you do there.
Mm-hmm. The reason I'm so not bullish on TikTok, but I like it a lot, is because Instagram rolled out that whole thing with Reels, and they almost made it like hard to avoid watching Reels. Like they replaced where you usually post with like that Reel button on like people's phones,
Yeah.
which kind of really like just spoke to me. It was like, okay, like why are they doing this so heavily? And I guess it just comes down to like the retention, which is why TikTok I think is really good. I feel like in the next couple of years there could be some kind of like intervention. Like of course their platform is still very like in beta mode, especially for advertisers. Like
Yeah.
their algorithm is nowhere close to being like good in my opinion, but I'd like to see TikTok and e-commerce over the next couple of years like really become intertwined. I don't know how, but
Yeah, I think there's going to be something that happens. I mean, they're definitely working with Walmart in some kind of way. I think what I really like about TikTok is it's the only platform I go on and I genuinely interact with people I never would have interacted with otherwise. Like I see content from all types of people that I don't normally talk to in my life. And I don't get that on Instagram. I don't really get that on Facebook for sure. So it's cool to have that kind of like raw like virality and exposure.
right. What else can we talk about for Facebook? This has been fire so far. I love this. Like, I'm
Yeah,
gonna be editing stuff out to make sure like this isn't included. But
totally.
is there anything else that you think would be
So I guess on the iOS 14 thing, I'll say one other thing. The way that I'm kind of heading my agency, just moving forward in general, is to be more thinking about creative and conversion rate, and less about like ad set type optimizations. I think there's always going to be a role that like your account structure plays, and there's always going to be testing that needs to happen on the platform like consistently every day, or every week or whatever. But more and more, I feel like what's going to differentiate like really high outcome performance from kind of mid-tier is just really great creative and a really good understanding of your audience. So you can speak to them just directly through the kind of ads you're putting out and have them resonate. And then having a really solid site or landing page that converts better than industry. So when you do get people on the site, like you have everything in place, you can convert them either on the spot or get them in an email flow or SMS or whatever it is, to make sure you're not wasting dollars driving traffic that kind of leaks out the bucket.
Right. That makes sense. Just trying to think. I guess. Is there anything else that comes to mind for you? I think we covered a lot of ground there.
Yeah, nothing else that comes to mind for me. Is there anything else that would be helpful for your brand specifically?
We get a lot of traffic from a lot of different platforms, so it's like our
Yeah.
retargeting audiences are always like populated. Sometimes we find
Yeah.
that like we find our cost per click and our click-through rate might be not the best for retargeting, but the ROAS is just so high that we
Yeah.
don't bother touching it.
Yeah. And if you have the right message, it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. What other traffic sources do you guys kind of use? Do you use Google? Do you use?
Yeah, we use a lot of Facebook, Google, TikTok ads. We're getting into like we're
Nice.
trying. It's hard to get approved sometimes for our niche because it's kind of
Oh,
weird products. But and then there's also Snapchat, which is good. I think Snapchat is also really good. I think that a lot of people start using that soon.
Gotcha. Okay. Have you guys tested TikTok creative and Facebook ads?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit, and we might try it again soon. Maybe just on Instagram stories.
How'd it work?
When we first ran it, we ran a winning TikTok creative on like the Facebook and IG feeds, and it was okay. Like it wasn't good enough to keep going with it, so we had turned it off. But we never tried it on Instagram stories, so that could be an option.
Yeah.
I think it would fit better on there. I'm not sure if you can do like reel ads yet, right? Like on Reels, is there ads on there?
Yeah, I don't think that's a placement yet, but it definitely will be.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I've seen a bunch of brands like Let's Disco, which is like a skincare brand, use memes in their ads. And I think this is probably going to be something that will either continue or kind of like blow up. It's just like so scroll stopping to see like a meme in your feed that's like pointing out a product and why you should use it. And it's kind of how we think now. So it's I think it breaks through really well. So that's something that we're trying to test out in the next couple of weeks.
Right. So to bottom line this phone call for people watching, if they're still sticking around, which I hope they are, assume that they're running some kind of e-commerce business. Maybe they're under the $1 million revenue mark. What are like some final tips you have that they go and focus on for the next 1 to 6 months? Like,
yeah, I would say structured creative testing is my one big takeaway. If you don't do anything else from after watching this, but you say, okay, I'm going to go and do DCO at a low budget every week with new creative or every other week with new creative, and then actually sit down after and analyze the results, not just like test it and keep running the winning one, but like, why didn't these work? Why did these other ones work? What's different about these ads? What's similar about them? Is it the framing? Is it the messaging? Really try to like understand your creative intuitively. So you're not like 100% data, but you're trying to use that data to get a better sense of your audience. That's like my one big takeaway. If there's a second, it's probably like do the same thing with your conversion rate. Those are the best things you can do to improve your Facebook performance.
right on. Well, I appreciate that. And if you guys are still sticking around, thank you so much for sticking around. I hope this call was very insightful. I'm going to be doing my best to have more people revolving around the whole paid media space in here. But thank you once again.
Thanks, man.
All right, guys, video's over. If you're still sticking around, thanks so much for watching. Just one more thing I wanted to mention. If you are an entrepreneur of any sort, you're a beginner, you're an expert, you're somewhere in the middle, and you want to be in a community that has a lot of like-minded people that are doing e-commerce, starting their own, software as a service companies, and everything in between there, feel free to join my Discord server each and every single day. People are coming in and joining my server and just interacting. You don't even have to talk too much. A lot of people just join and like to listen in on what we're talking about. Look at all the resources that I have in there. There's a lot of channels in there talking about things like investing and e-commerce and software. And of course, all my YouTube videos are in there, and I'm always in there giving you gold nuggets. So if you want to join, that link is below. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.